Órale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin. Familia. Let's go to Raider Nation. Silver and black. Yes, silver and black attack. Familia. This is always a special episode for me because our invitado is someone I've known longer than anybody else that we've had on this podcast. So I'm gonna bring him in a second, but first I want to make sure you're following Familia FFB on YouTube. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Get the great content like we got on here. And also, when you go to Underdog Fantasy, use that promo code Familia. Go to underdog.com. You the first deposit up to $250, you get matched up to that. So $250 free bucks for playing best ball. You might even be playing against me. Let's go. And let's go with our amigo, my man, Vinny Bonsignore. Oh, mi amigo, colleague of mine back in the day. We were, we spent a lot of time together at batting practice at the Dodgers. But yeah, bring him in. He's been kicking butt with a Raider Nation radio, as you could see, Vegas Nation there on his shirt, and Las Vegas Review Journal. My man, Vinny, welcome home.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me. And whenever you hit me up with the text, it feels like the calendar tells me, okay, training camp is right here. So we're raring to go.
Yeah, only probably less than 2 weeks away for most teams.
Costa Mesa, here we come.
Yes. Yeah, you get the little break from the Vegas heat from there.
We'll put it this way. The average high in Costa Mesa during the time we're going to be there is about 79, 80. The average high in Henderson or Las Vegas, where the Raiders practice, about 101, 102. So, it'll be a little bit cooler in Costa Mesa.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Well, and hopefully also you get plenty of tacos that when you're there. But
there you go.
I know you got good stuff in Vegas, too. So Love it. And, hey, almost par for the course. What? We got new regime coming on. Antonio Pierce really won over the team last year. Can you give me an idea of what kind of like the regime change and kind of like how it could really start to impact the offense?
Yeah, I think that more than anything, I'm sure we're going to get into it. It's going to be the quarterback who ultimately impacts the offense one way or another. I do think that Antonio Pierce wants to be a guy that hangs his hat on, a punishing run game, play action pass off of the run game. He wants to be able to have a quarterback and an offense that, gets the ball out quickly and takes advantage of the weapons. And the Raiders have a lot of weapons, at whoever the quarterback is going to be at their disposal. When you're talking about Davante Adams and Michael Mayer and Jakobi Meyers and Trey Tucker and Brock Bowers, the young rookie from Georgia. But it's really, the offense is going to go to me as far as the quarterback takes it. But in a general sense, in terms of the impact, that Antonio Pierce has had on this team, Jorge, I can't explain enough how different it was just in the one day between Josh McDaniels getting fired and Antonio Pierce being hired, and what that locker room felt like when we walked in there for the first time. There was a little basketball court set up in the locker room. Players were we called it the Hoop of Hope. That's what it got termed. And it was just like this little, it was like just a little miniature, basketball with a miniature hoop, and guys were dunking on each other, and it was lively and fun in there. And it was just a total mood change. And, I go back to I talked to Mark Davis the day after all these moves were made. And, he's kind of walking me through the elevation of Antonio Pierce from linebacker coach to head coach. And he just felt like, the X's and O's are one thing, and that'll come, and you hire good assistant coaches that have a command of all that. Patrick Graham on the defensive side of the ball, and now Luke Getsy offensively. But what he felt like he had in Antonio was a culture leader, and somebody that was going to be a leader and lead this football team. And you just felt like that was happening day one, not just in the locker room, but in the building, within the fan base, within the alumni. He just struck the right chord for this team. Maybe it doesn't work for every other team out there, but then maybe the Detroit Lions coach doesn't work anywhere else but Detroit, or maybe that's the perfect fit for him. And I feel like for the Raiders and the Raiders mantra and the Raiders way, Antonio Pierce is the guy that embodies that and encourages that. And you felt that across the board. And I think there's going to be carryover to this year. I don't know how far the Raiders are going to go. Like I said, I think the quarterback is going to be a big part of that, whichever quarterback it is. But I think over the long run, over the years, if they stay with Antonio Pierce and stick with it, I think he's a guy that's going to make a huge change here with the Raiders in Las Vegas. Might not happen this year because they might be limited at quarterback, but I think they've got their right leader in place.
Well, let's talk about the quarterback. I mean, we got the incumbent Aidan O'Connell, and also Gardner Minshew as coming in, having started most of the season last year at Indianapolis, and he's got starting time with, he started games for Philadelphia and also from Jacksonville. Could you get a sense on who might be the leader of the pack, and if that person could take over, and what the offense would look like with them at the helm?
Yeah, it was hard to gauge that during minicamp and OTAs. They were literally just trying to upload the offense and get it installed. And I think evaluation was a little bit hard under those circumstances. There was never really a point where they could master anything. It was like, install this part of the offense, go on the field and practice it. The next day it was on to another phase of the offense, and so on and so forth. But they finally got their playbook in, and that was an achievement in and of itself. So it was hard to tell like who was better or worse. It didn't look good at times, but that was understandable, especially going against the defense that they were going against. But I think ideally for the Raiders, I think what they would like to see happen is for Aidan O'Connell to be the guy. I think that's their preference, because I think they believe or at least feel like there's a win or a ceiling still left for Aidan O'Connell. I think it's incumbent on them to figure out what that ceiling might be. I think it would be almost a waste of a season if it ultimately goes to Gardner Minshew and the Raiders win 7, 8 games, 9 games, whatever the case might be. But they're no further along in terms of making a decision on what to do at quarterback at the end of this year compared to when it started. I think it's vital that they figure out to some extent, what do you have in Aidan O'Connell? And the only way that they could figure that out, to be honest, is by him playing. And, whether he starts the season and takes the job and runs with it, and at the end of the year, the Raiders like, yes, this is the guy that we can move forward with. Or if he takes the job and it's just okay, and they get to the end of the season and they're like, not bad, but we feel like we need to do better. That's good information to have as an organization. Or maybe he gets the starting job and isn't able to handle it and hang on to it, and they got to move on to Gardner Minshew. That's also good information. It might not be great information in terms of, okay, you got to go out there and get a new quarterback or a better quarterback, but at least rather than let the season go and play out and really have no idea at the end of the year what they really have in Aidan O'Connell. So I think that they understand they got to figure out what they have in their second-year quarterback from Purdue, and I think they're going to give him every opportunity to show that, good, bad, or indifferent, because at the end of the year, they have to have a better idea where they are at quarterback so it can kind of dictate what they do moving forward at that position.
And let's say it's Aidan O'Connell. Can you give me an idea of like the progression? Because there were some things to like last year.
Yeah.
There were some things to like. What kind of like what would be the next step, and that which is often the greatest step, on year 2, that's the greatest leap for a lot of players, especially quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think for him, it's what are you seeing at the line of scrimmage before the ball is even snapped? Are you making the right decisions? From that standpoint, in terms of, okay, that's what the defense has given me, this is where I need to go with the ball. Rather than being, confused or not seeing it correctly. I think that's the next step for him. Being a little bit more decisive and accurate with his passes. He completed 62% of his passes last year. That's good, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. If you want to be a championship caliber quarterback, he needs to get better on third downs. He was one of the least productive quarterbacks on third downs in the NFL. The Raiders were one of the least productive teams in the NFL on third downs. He was not productive in the red zone. He was one of the least productive quarterbacks in the red zone. Touchdown percentage wise in the NFL, the Raiders were one of the worst teams in the red zone last year. If you look at every team was in the top 10, top 11 in the third downs and in red zone offense, they basically all made the playoffs, save for maybe one or two. And typically their quarterbacks, those playoff teams' quarterbacks, were really good on third downs and in the red zone. So those are areas that he really needs to clean up and just get better at. Now, cutting him some slack. He was a rookie quarterback. It wasn't expected that he was going to be the starting quarterback. It was a sudden change midway through the season. Oh, by the way, they changed their head coach and their offensive coordinator and general manager at the same time they made the quarterback change. So there is, some extenuating circumstances that he had to deal with last year. And it's understandable that he wasn't perfect or he wasn't great in certain areas, but it's year two. The Raiders have to decide what they have in Aidan O'Connell, and those are some of the areas that he needs to get better at.
Okay, well, one of the guys that's directly impacted, Davante Adams, he had 175 targets last year, one of the league leaders, over 100 receptions, but took a step backward in the yardage because just the longer passes, the deeper passes weren't there, and the accuracy wasn't what he had seen in the past from Derek Carr.
Or Aaron Rodgers.
And who also used that's the benchmark right there, who also used him like a weapon in the red zone. So how much is he still going to be a focal point of this offense, even in the more run the run centric attack?
Yeah, no, I think that there's definitely a lot of intentionality to take advantage of what they have in Davante Adams. It's 2 years for Davante here with the Raiders, and to say that they haven't maximized the asset that they have in him would be an understatement. Going all the way back to Derek Carr, where there were a lot of targets, but the receptions didn't reflect how many times he was being targeted. So there were a lot of balls that went his way that just weren't well-thrown balls. That continued last year with Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, and Aidan O'Connell. You think about it for a second, and Davante went from playing basically with one quarterback in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, maybe Aaron was hurt and they had to go to a backup. I don't really recall that actually having to happen, but I'm sure it did.
Once with Brett Hundley, just once with
Brett Hundley. There you go. Whereas, you start counting the quarterbacks that now he's played with in 2 years.
Wow.
Derek Carr, Jarrett Stidham, Brian Hoyer, Jimmy Garoppolo, Aidan O'Connell. That's 5. Now you're throwing Gardner Minshew. That's 6. That's 6 quarterbacks in less than 2. I mean, he's going into year 3 now. That's pretty telling right there. And so, that needs to get stabilized one way or another. And whoever is the quarterback, they have to be more accurate with their throws to Davante Adams, because last I checked, he's still getting open. But there were a lot of balls that were thrown high, wide, low, short. There were balls that got thrown his way by all 3 quarterbacks that put him in harm's way. He took some vicious hits last year, and all of those hits were basically on the quarterback because the ball placement was not where it needed to be. So that's a big part of this whole thing. And I think what they've added with Brock Bowers, I think they also expect Michael Mayer, who was criminally underused last year. Every time they got him the ball, he did something with it, but there was sort of this, refusal or just lack of foresight to get him the ball more often last year. I think that's going to change this year, all of which can help free up potentially Davante Adams, because if the Raiders can run the ball, if the Raiders can start utilizing some of those weapons outside of Davante Adams, invariably it's going to force the defenses to make some adjustments, and maybe those adjustments help Davante Adams find more room to operate.
Because I'm finding myself choosing him as one of the, in the early best ball drafts, he's going in the second round, and I'm kind of like, I find it hard to pass him because it's just the volume is so much there. And it's like he's going in the same range. I'll tell you that right now, he's going in the same range with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Chris Olave, 2 guys that, you don't know what how the rookie is going to come in.
Right.
But he had almost 40 more targets than Chris Olave last year. And I'm kind of like, it's hard to just pass up the volume.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pull on a thread Brock Bowers, and you mentioned Michael Mayer. I know all of the pundits beforehand, all the drafts, cognoscente, we're all saying the Raiders are going quarterback, and we're not. Nobody mocked Brock Bowers there.
Yeah,
Brock Bowers is there now. You mentioned Michael Mayer. There's Jakobi Meyers still there. Can you give me an idea behind Adams, kind of how the pecking order would be for targets?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I went back and looked at what the Patriots did during their heyday with Aaron Fernandez and Gronkowski, and how they those guys got 90 to 100 plus targets between them, both players, both tight ends, but they still were able to have a number one wide receiver. I'm blanking on who his name was, but he had over 100 targets. They ran the ball. They also incorporated a secondary wide receiver with about 70, 80 targets as well. Now, granted, part of that is all predicated on extending drives and getting the necessary snaps, and which gives you more bites at the apple. And certainly the Patriots were able to do that with Tom Brady at quarterback. Last year was a real challenge at times for the Raiders to keep their play snaps up because too many 3-and-outs or turnovers or whatever the case might be. A lot of short drives that didn't give them the opportunity to really tap into all their various, targets. Again, that goes back. Some of that goes back to the lack of success on third downs. But there's also ways to mitigate your third down by being better on first and second down. The point being, keeping your snap counts up. And if they're able to do that, and a lot of that's on the quarterback, then there's a bevy of weapons here. I don't know what the pecking order is going to be, but I would imagine Davante Adams is going to lead the team in targets. And I would say that Jakobi Meyers probably number 2, but I think Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer are going to get their fair share of love. I think there's a plan behind drafting Brock Bowers, and really all you need to know about Brock Bowers is that was Sean McVay's favorite player in this draft. He tried to trade up a couple of times, the Rams did, to move into position to get Brock Bowers, and they have guys like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and other weapons, but Sean, who I have all the respect in the world for, was like, yes, we got all these weapons. I still want to go bring back this ultimate weapon and Brock Bowers onto this team. So if you're wondering why the Raiders, who just drafted Michael Mayer and have some of the guys that we've mentioned, why they wanted to go and get Brock Bowers, just understand that for the same exact reason that Sean McVay was adamant, tried to trade up, made some compelling offers to the Raiders and the New York Jets to do just that. But by the time he fell to the Raiders, and would they have drafted Michael Penix if he was there? Possibly. I can't say that they wouldn't have done that because I know that they liked Michael Penix. But when, what was it, 7 quarterbacks, 6 whatever it was, I think it was 7 quarterbacks got taken before the Raiders pick at number 13. That ruled out quarterback at number 13. Then it became best player available. And I know that a lot of fans wanted that right tackle, and that's understandable. But when you've got a player like Brock Bowers sitting there at number 13, and when there's a lot of people who felt like he was the best player outside of quarterbacks in this draft, you have to jump at that opportunity because he can be a game changer offensively. And this is a pick for many years, not just this year. I think this is a player that's going to have a tremendous career with the Raiders, and I think Michael Mayer will as well.
It is interesting because I mean he wasn't always Bowers was not always lined up in line as a traditional tight end. So I think you're right. At some point you need talented football players.
Exactly.
And he is. I mean he and like you said, it's hard to. I didn't know about McVay trying to trade up for him, but I could totally see it. I could totally see it. He would be incredible in that offense. He may be incredible. Hopefully he's incredible there because we need more talented players in fantasy football. So
yeah, right.
more points. I know Antonio Pierce wants to play defense and run the ball, but let's get some points on the board too.
Oh, he wants points. Trust me.
I love it. Well, he's a Long Beach guy, so he knows he's got to see some flash and dash.
Yep.
But we talked about running. Zamir White handled the rock the last 4 games of the season. fewest rushing attempts was 17. He had a good career at Georgia. Obviously, he had a couple of knee surgeries in there. Is he shaping up to get the major load of maybe not quite what Josh Jacobs had in 2022, but just a major, almost bell cow role?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, the 4 games that he played last year, and I want to say he led the NFL in rushing over those 4 games and, rushing yards per attempt over those 4 games. Not the biggest sample size, but I think enough. And those were games against some teams that needed to win some football games. And the Raiders, were trying to win to keep their coaches' jobs. So it wasn't like it was just garbage football at that time of year. Our teams were just playing out the string. Those were competitive football games. One against the Kansas City Chiefs that he helped seal. So the circumstance and what he did with that opportunity, I think, gave the Raiders a little bit of more comfort, I should say. They wanted Josh Jacobs back, but I don't think they weren't going to overpay. It was going to be on their number, and I think having Zamir White show what he could do over those 4 games, allowed them to be a little bit more certain in their position when it came to Josh Jacobs, that they felt like Zamir is ready to take that role and run with it. I'm with you. I don't necessarily think it's going to be, the Josh Jacobs role, but that's why you go out and get an Alexander Madison. You still have Amir Abdullah, who's serviceable in situational football. And I think that Dylan Lowby, the rookie from New Hampshire, is going to somehow, some way find his way onto the field. I think special teams is going to be his calling card early on, but I feel like we saw enough in OTAs and minicamp to show that, and now he's got to carry it on in training camp, obviously, but to show that the Raiders like what they see in this young rookie, and he's going to probably give them a lot of compelling reasons to get him on the field, not playing it down in and down out, but coming up with some packages that take advantage of what he brings to the table.
No, awesome. No, that was a great overview on the offense. So, can you give me a quick look at the O-line? How it shaped out?
I mean, it's on one hand, you're dealing with 3 new players at 3 different positions. Dylan Parham is moving over to right guard from left guard. Thayer Munford is taking over for Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. And the rookie Jackson Powers Johnson is now the left guard. And it was interesting because when they drafted Jackson Powers Johnson, a center who also played a little bit of guard, but primarily a center at the University of Oregon, they announced him as a guard. And I think we all assumed, okay, he's going to take over at right guard. That was the open position. But lo and behold, in rookie minicamp, he's playing left guard. And then when he was on the field in OTAs and minicamp, he was at left guard. And it just kind of dawned on us like, oh, that's actually a pretty decent move right there. You're moving Dylan to his better position at right guard. And you're now slotting Jackson Powers Johnson, who I think is going to be a fan favorite here with the Raiders, right alongside Colton Miller to really put together what could be a very dominant type left side of your offensive line, both in run blocking and in pass blocking. And then in Thayer, I think you have somebody that I think fans are, not that they're sleeping on him, but he's quietly played good football in his 2 years with the Raiders. They've kind of moved him all around. He's played some different roles, but the good news is he's played a lot, more than people I think understand, whether it was in injury relief at left tackle or sometimes over at right tackle. Sometimes he was the extra tackle when they went jumbo. But wherever he was, if you look at whatever you might think of Pro Football Focus, they've thought pretty highly of him in the time that he was on the field. And I think he gives the Raiders a more athletic, more powerful player at right tackle than Jermaine, who we love. Jermaine, he's headed to the New York Giants. He's going to be missed in the locker room, and certainly for us with the media. But I think that Thayer brings some different things to the table. So when you look at this offensive line with the changes that they made, there is some concern because until they go out there and prove it, it's still some question mark making some of the positional changes that they did. But I think on paper it has a chance to be a lot better than last year, and for this particular scheme that Luke Getsy is running, and certainly for what Antonio Pierce wants to do in the run game. I think this could be a more athletic, more powerful offensive line than it had been last year or the last couple of years. And I think that's going to serve the Raiders pretty well. So is it a great offensive line? Maybe not. But I think it could be a top 15 offensive line, and that's plenty good enough.
Yeah, you know what? It's Ross Tucker has said many times, instead of having like one or two, stalwarts on the line and just, three or four weak guys or five good guys, he'd take the five good guys that are just solid. So
Right.
yeah, I'll take that. We've talked about Antonio Pierce wanting to play good defense. I don't think there was a more impressive defensive display than the Christmas game against the Chiefs in Kansas City with Taylor Swift there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, YouTube algorithm. Hopefully you picked that up. But where are they shaping up as being better against the run and the pass? Good or bad on either side?
Well, it kind of all starts with the fact that if you count Jacorian Bennett, who started the season over at cornerback, at one of those cornerback positions, it starts with the fact that 10 starters are back from last year's team, which was a good defense. They were a top 10 defense by the end of last year, and one of the best defenses almost from the moment that Antonio Pierce took over. So 10 starters are back. The 11th, the one new starter, is a guy by the name of Christian Wilkins, who was the best defensive tackle on the open market. Somebody that the Miami Dolphins did not want to lose, but they got so many high-priced players on that team, and they have to deal with Tua Tagovailoa, and what are they going to do with that? So it was one of those. It's rare that a guy that's still in his prime and is still a dominant force hits the free agency market like Christian did. And it wasn't because the Dolphins didn't want him. They just couldn't bring him back from a financial standpoint. And the Raiders were just pounced on that to make what is on paper shaping up as a really good defensive line with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins, John Jenkins and Adam Butler, who, were both brought back on 1-year deals. They played really good football last year. Malcolm Kuntz, who over the last 9 games of the year last season turned himself into one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. Now his challenge is, to do it over a 17-game schedule. You've got Tyree Wilson, who the Raiders remain extremely high on. Janorius Robinson, who, was a serviceable rotational player when he got a chance to play. Some unknowns in Byron Young and Matthew Butler and Nessa Jade Silvera, but guys that, the Raiders think pretty highly of. And if they could just show at least one of those guys that they could be a rotational piece, that makes it even better. So to me, the defensive line starts off really good, and has a chance to be very good if Tyree, is able to be the player the Raiders thought he was going to be, when they picked up number 7 in 2023. So it's a great starting point there. And then you go to the cornerbacks. Jack Jones, made a huge impact in his time, once he showed up in November. Nate Hobbs is one of the better, top slot cornerbacks in the NFL when he's on the field. Trayvon Merrick played great at safety last year. Might not be the best safety in the NFL, but he's plenty good enough on a good winning team. Marcus Epps was a really solid signing. Robert Spillane was a great signing. Devon Diablo played good at linebacker. So as opposed to years past, and I know covering this team since the tail end of the 2019 season, this is by far the best defense that the Raiders have coming into a new season. Years past, it was a hope and a prayer that some young guys or guys that they were able to sign to a 1-year deal or in free agency were going to, get the job done. And it never really did come to fruition. You had guys that were playing not because they were great options, because they were just simply the best option that the Raiders had. Now you've got guys that have proven it, and all those players that I just mentioned, as good to solid to really good players. We haven't even talked obviously about Max and what he brings to the table. And as opposed to last year when everyone was saying, man, if the Raiders can just get to a point where maybe they could be a top 19, top 20-ish defense and cut those points from, 30 points down to about 20, boy, that would make a huge difference. And lo and behold, they ended up just surpassing all of that in year 2 under Patrick Graham and developing some of these, players that we've been talking about. to become a really good defense. And I think now going into year 3 with Patrick Graham, with all the starters that we mentioned are coming back, and the addition of Christian Wilkins, it has a chance to be even better than last year.
Yeah, and you know what? I'd love to see, the defense get better. Just selfishly, having watched Aaron Donald, and you got to see Aaron Donald seeing a dominant, defensive player, not get just totally, not get, double and triple teamed, even though Aaron Donald. But Max Crosby, I think, is maybe he's not. I mean, Aaron Donald's on Mount Rushmore, but of defensive players, but Max Crosby's, he's definitely all pro caliber, and I'd love to see him get more of a national spotlight. So
yeah, I think because of where the Raiders are starting defensively this year, it's more of a known quantity. I think there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it, and I think if this defense delivers and produces like they did last year, if not better, I think people are going to start looking at that defense a lot differently and understanding, wow, Max Crosby is not just putting really good stats out there, but he's the leader and the lightning rod of a really good defense. I think that's going to change some votes in his favor.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to change my Mexican food question up a little bit this time. I'm going to be in downtown Vegas in the near future. Any recommendations down there as far as a good place for tacos or something?
Yeah, don't know necessarily the names down there, but there's a really good food scene downtown Las Vegas. If you go to the Arts District, there's just you just walk around. That's one thing that people maybe lose sight of. There's a real good local scene here in Las Vegas, and a lot of it is downtown. I know you're going to be at the Circa, and it's not far from there at all. Just hit downtown and walk up and down the streets in that Arts District, and you're going to find a whole bunch of good restaurants there for all types of food as well. You really can't go wrong, when you get down there. So enjoy it. There's some really good places at Circa. The Sahara has some good spots.
Oh yeah.
But you're not going to go wrong. If you go restaurant or bar hopping down there in downtown, you're going to find some good spots.
Love it. Restaurant / bar hopping. I love it. Yeah, just trying tacos at different places. I'm up for that.
There you go.
Oh, mi amigo, this is always fun. I'm so glad this is happening. Please, you got your regular spots on Raider Nation Radio. Please pump any and everything you got coming up.
Oh, well, we're getting ready to do our positional previews starting on Sunday at the Review Journal. Just go over to vegasnation.com. Starting on Sunday, right on through to training camp. So all your Raider news and analysis, videos, everything is there at vegasnation.com. And then every day, 10 a.m. to 7 a.m., whether you want to listen, whether you're here in Las Vegas, listening locally on 9:20 a.m., or you can go to raiders.com and click on radio. It'll take you to the live stream of the morning tailgate show from 7 to 10 a.m. LV Sports Network also you can stream the show live, and then at the end of each show, we cut up all the 3 hours into 3 different podcast versions that is available on every podcast showcase out there or platform out there. So just Google the morning tailgate with Vinny Bonsignore, and it'll take you right there.
Love it. Yeah, we can never have too much Vinny B. Never have too much Vinny B. 15 hours a week. Let's go. Love it. I mean, thank you so much. Thank you. Always, I don't know if I've told you this, but you were kind of like the inspiration of this series. When you back in 2020, when we did a quick audio only sit down, which is still on the Familia FFB channel, when you were covering the Rams at the time, and then it was the next year that I thought, wow, I got to do that like with Vinny B, and the next year became the NFL Insider Series. So
you got it, man. Anytime.
Muchas gracias. And Familia, muchas gracias for joining us. Remember, one more time, checking out Familia FFB on YouTube. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. If you want it on audio, we're going to have these shows coming out on audio as well, and just Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcasts. And last thing, remember, underdogfantasy.com. Use that promo code Familia. Get in there. Use that. get in those best ball streets. The next 2 months worth of drafting is the best 2 months worth of drafting. So get you ready for your fantasy football drafts. Well, muchas gracias to our invitado Vinny B one more time. Muchas gracias, amigo. Oh man, muchas gracias, amigos y amigas. And remember, todos somos familia. Salud.